There's been a constant stream lately of these attacks by both the Democratic candidates and their supporters. And yes, the Dems are up against each other, but they're also running against John McCain, and he could end up the big winner here. Let's bring in Ann Kornblut, national political reporter for The Washington Post, and Michael Crowley, senior editor at The New Republic. All right, Ann, these comments by Reverend Wright are old, but they're coming to life now because the church is selling copies of his sermons, knowing Wright's controversial nature. So why do you think that Obama asked him to serve on an advisory committee?
Look, both of these candidates have had all kinds of people on their advisory committees. They need to keep different sets of constituencies in line. They've had these supporters for a long time, and when they start...
So, Julie, I've got to point out, I lived in Chicago for 10 years, and I was invited to that church twice. That was not the kind of sermon that I heard that day. Else. And for more now on Barack Obama's possible problems with his former pastor, we're joined by Julie Mason, national reporter for the Houston Chronicle, and Jonathan Capehart, the editorial writer for the Washington Post. So, Jonathan, I had like 3 phone calls since our last conversation about this at 10 o'clock this morning from people saying, why is this coming up now? If Barack Obama has acknowledged these comments in the past, why are we talking about it again today?
And a culture that is controlled by rich white people. Hillary can never know that. Hillary ain't never been called a...
Oh, well, let's bring in NBC's Ron Allen. And Ron, what, if anything, is the Clinton campaign saying about this?
Nothing. They haven't responded to it at all. Frankly, I'm a little bit surprised as to why this is back out there again. You know, these comments were made some time ago by the Reverend Wright, as I understand it, and the Obama campaign has tried to do everything they can to say that they do not agree with him, and I don't quite know why this has come up again out of the blue. The Clinton campaign isn't really going to be drawn into this, and you know, interestingly, some of the things that Reverend Wright had to say, and not to support him or not to condone him, but what he was just saying, Hillary Clinton doesn't know what it's like to be a black man in America, essentially, is I would think is fairly true, although, of course, I wouldn't use his language to do that. You know, I think the problem here, or the issue here, is that, you know, there are supporters, surrogates, advisors, people connected with both campaigns who are saying any number of things, and the candidates are trying to distance themselves from it. They're trying to keep this campaign on at a higher level, if you will, about the issues. Reverend Wright and Barack Obama's relationship goes back a long way, and again, Reverend Barack Obama has tried to say on a number of occasions, and I think as recently as this morning, when these old comments came back, that he does not agree with Reverend Wright, and he disassociates himself from a number of points that he tries to make. But he is a pastor at the church. I think actually he is no longer a pastor at the church that Obama goes to, and he's tried to distance himself from him a bit. But of course there is a relationship of some sort.
Yeah, he's no longer a pastor. He gave his last sermon on February 10th.
What I think Obama has to do is make a speech or make remarks, not manipulative, not creepy, just honest about what his religious views are and what his Christianity is and how it informs his life. Just go and do it now. He didn't put this on the table. Somebody else did, but I really think he ought to address it.
So he's got to go back and do it again, because he did that. He did. Remember? I pray to Jesus every night. Remember that whole thing?
But it was just an answer to a question instead of...
Exactly. Instead of a thoughtful exposition. I think this man is a Christian, and I think it informs part of what he does. And with most candidates, I'd say don't even go there. But in his case, I'd say go there and tell us what's in your heart.
All right.
That made me cringe. These people are part of me, and they are part of America, this country that I love.
To help me analyze this speech, Rachel Maddow, MSNBC political analyst, and of course host of her own show on Air America Radio, and Eugene Robinson, associate editor and columnist at the Washington Post. Rachel, Gene, good evening to both of you.
Hi, Keith.
Good evening, Keith.
We'll get the did it work big picture stuff in a minute, but let me ask you first both, and you start with this, Gene. The invoking of his grandmother there, might this be the key to this speech? Does everybody in this country, black or white or whatever, have somebody like that in their lives? Did Obama transcend this controversy by finding something nearly universal for Americans?
I thought that was a striking moment for 2 reasons. One, what you just said is true. Everyone off the defensive and get his campaign kind of moving forward again. But I think that the consensus is that it was really a remarkable speech, not least for the way it addressed the fears and concerns and apprehensions of white Americans, white working class and middle class Americans, who have concerns about busing, who have concerns about crime, who have concerns about affirmative action. And he hit these hot button issues directly, and it was really quite interesting.
And Rachel, to the subject of response, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, a large number of largely positive reviews for this speech from people you might not expect to be receptive. The online version of the National Review, the lead news guy at the Christian Broadcasting Network, and our mutual friend Pat Buchanan. What does that say about it? Was it that good a speech? Are they damning with faint praise? What does that reaction indicate to you?
As soon as the text of the speech was released, which, as you remember, was right about the time that he started speaking, as I was scanning through it, I immediately came up with what the predictable, cynical, right-wing meme would be on this, which is Barack Obama gives lofty speech on race in which he does not call for his pastor to be immediately arrested, and therefore we must continue to demonize Jeremiah Wright and demonize Barack Obama for having any association with him. That's what I predicted today.
To that point, my grandfather, a firefighter, put himself in danger to save people, didn't care who they were. His parents were immigrants to this country, and they came to New York, in the late 1800s. They're so naive, they told him, don't touch a black person. The color will come off on your hands. Wow. And one night, I was 9 years old, my parents were out to dinner, he was babysitting me, television's on, and, in the middle of Hawaii Five-0 or Ironside or whatever the show was. On comes the news bulletin from Memphis, Martin Luther King assassinated. And my grandfather, who was a good man, says, why did they interrupt my show to tell me about some N-word getting shot? And it went right through me, because I knew who Martin Luther King was, even though I was like 9. And now I knew about my grandfather. I can't talk to him about race relations. And if we start talking about who was the better ball player, Mickey Mays or Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle, I can't trust his answer. But I didn't love him any less, and I couldn't have thrown him under a bus somewhere. I'm just wondering, as complicated as this whole story is, did Obama bringing his own grandmother's prejudices into this thing suddenly make the whole issue amazingly simple?
Yeah, Keith, it's probably exactly what it is. I think what he did was say, there's a million different or 300 million different stories to tell about race in America, but really there's one American story about this, and that is that when we become a more perfect union, part of that is that we get less racist. And, I mean, it was a non-patronizing speech. It was a not pandering speech. He did not oversimplify. He actually brought down his rhetorical tone a notch so that this would be something that brought light and not heat to a subject on which there is so much heat, in order to say, listen, we've got a political task at hand. We've got a leadership task at hand, and that is to lead America toward becoming less divided by race.
Another user responded saying, quote, it takes a lot of guts to embrace someone that could hurt you in the public eye. Obama is one of the first real American candidates that I have seen in a long time. Philadelphia blogger Dick Pullman writes, this was gutsy stuff. Perhaps in politics, it's always risky to tell white voters that they are willfully clueless about how black people really feel. Obama also challenged his own brethren by suggesting that the harsh rhetoric in black churches is too often a dead end. The risk is that too many skeptics will cherry pick the passages that tick them off and ignore the rest.
I would think about our own people. I would think about those who need help. That's what this campaign is about, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. We have more work to do when more young black men languish in prison than attend colleges and universities across America. We have more work to do when the black incidence of HIV/AIDS and diabetes and asthma and every other illness is multiple times higher than the rest of the population. When millions of children start off in the race of life so far behind only because of race, only because of class, that's a betrayal of our ideals. That's not just an African American problem, that is an American problem that we have to solve.
If something about Barack Obama seemed different to you after the race speech this morning, maybe that was the whole point. Make no claims that this was not politics. It was political stagecraft of the highest order.